Today, we will be going over one of the most popular wrestling techniques in the world and most recognizable moves in the Street Fighter universe. Used by wrestlers like Jerry Lawler, The Undertaker, the Brainbusters, and Kazuchika Okada. This is the Screw Piledriver, better known as the Spinning Piledriver. So, let's get into it. History. To adequately appreciate this technique, we must first consider the history of its predecessor, the piledriver. A piledriver is a professional wrestling driver technique in which the wrestler takes their opponent, turns them upside down, and then drops into a sitting or kneeling posture, driving the opponent headfirst into the mat. The method is reported to have been invented by Wild Bill Lawson. The term is derived from a type of construction equipment known as a piledriver, which makes several huge strikes on the top of a large primary foundation support, gradually burying it in the earth with each one. The act of using a piledriver is known as piledriving. A piledriver victim is claimed to have been pile-driven. The piledriver is often regarded as one of the most deadly maneuvers in wrestling. The reverse piledriver was directly responsible for curtailing Stone Cold Steve Austin's career when his opponent, Owen Hart, bungled the move, genuinely damaging Austin's neck. As a result, the maneuver is outlawed in WWE, with the exception of Kane and The Undertaker, who have prior expertise and have established the tombstone as a finisher. However, in recent years, skilled wrestlers have been permitted to use specific forms of the piledriver, and it is not prohibited in certain other wrestling organizations, like All Elite Wrestling. When introducing this move into the Street Fighter universe, the move needs to be intriguing and distinct from Mike Hager, so Zangief was given the spinning piledriver. Users in universe. This technique is not used by many fighters like the Hadouken in the Street Fighter universe, but some variations of the moves are used. These characters are Zangief and Mick Zangief, who uses the piledriver as a throw, the spinning piledriver as a special, the Borscht Dynamite as an aerial version of the spinning piledriver, and his Super Art Bolshoi Stormbuster. Seth, who uses the spinning piledriver after using a teleport to put him in position in air, then slamming the foe into the ground. Avatar, who performs it just as Zangief does. Mike Hager from the Final Fight series. He uses the piledriver in Final Fight, Mighty Final Fight, and Namco X Capcom, the flying piledriver in Final Fight. Streetwise, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, the spinning piledriver in Saturday Night Slam Masters, Ring of Destruction. Slam Masters 2, Final Fight Revenge, Final Fight 2, Final Fight, Capcom Fighting All-Stars, and Namco X Capcom and the Cyclone Piledriver in Ring of Destruction, Slam Masters 2. Hugo Anor from the Final Fight series. Uses the piledriver in Final Fight games and from Street Fighter and Final Fight, has a similar move called Moonsault Press that starts like the piledriver then turns into a moonsault. Freddy from Final Fight series. Uses the piledriver in Final Fight 2. Biff Slamkovich from the Slama Masters series. He has the jumping tombstone and the tombstone piledriver. El Stingray. He has the screwdriver and the flying screwdriver. King Rastaman. He has the pogo piledriver. Babyhead from Captain Commando. He uses a piledrive during his gameplay. Users in Capcom. Looking into other Capcom games, the move still is not used a lot, but it exists. The characters that it can be seen used by are Leo from Red Earth uses the move via the Gaia Driver and the Gigas Driver. Dmitry Maximov from Darkstalkers uses the piledriver as a throw. Gregorio from Beat Down, Fists of Vengeance uses variations of this move in his Canadian Destroyer and the Spinebuster. Hideyoshi Toyotomi from the Sengoku Basara series does the spinning piledriver through his move Tenchi Soso. And Chuck Green from Dead Rising series uses the piledriver. Users non-Capcom. Moving outside of Capcom games, you start to see this move used a lot. I can't put all of the characters who use it, but I can put noticeable characters from other series that do. These characters are Ace from Street Fighter EX3. He uses the same exact spinning piledriver as Zangief. King from the Tekken series has the Tombstone piledriver and screwdriver. Wolf Hawkfield from the Virtua Fighter series has the Crucifix piledriver and the Steiner screwdriver. Raiden from Fatal Fury, King of Fighters. He uses a piledriver as a throw. Max Thunder from the Streets of Rage series. Ladiva from Grand Blue Fantasy Versus has her Jewel Resort screwdriver as a special move and Ultimate Jewel Resort screwdriver as a super move. And Tina Armstrong from the Dead or Alive series has the MDT, Marvelous Dreamer Tombstone, and the Texas Driver. Variations. I was surprised to learn that there are so many versions of this technique. As I thought about it more, it shouldn't have, because different fighters will make a move work the best for them, specializing in it. Especially in an entertainment combat space. All the main variations and their version I found are Traditional Piledriver, a belly-to-back piledriver. This is the classic and original piledriver technique. From a position in which the opponent is bent forward and the opponent's head is tucked between the attacker's thighs and a standing head scissors. The wrestler grabs around the opponent's midsection and lifts so that the opponent is held upside down facing in the same direction as the wrestler. The wrestler then drops to a sitting position with the opponent's head falling between the wrestler's thighs down to the mat. The inverted tombstone, cradle piledriver, rope-assisted, package piledriver, and aided piledriver are a variation of this move. Spike piledriver, a jumping piledriver, also known as a stiff piledriver, and is performed in the same way as a basic piledriver. However, the wrestler will jump in the air before dropping down to the sitting position for more impact. Reverse piledriver, a belly-to-belly piledriver. A wrestler faces an opponent and grabs the opponent's waist and turns them upside down, holding them belly-to-belly against their torso. The wrestler then jumps up and drops down to a sitting position, driving the opponent's head down to the mat between the wrestler's thighs. Another variation of this is the Fire Thunder Driver, where the wrestler may also place the opponent over their shoulder and fall to a seated position, driving the opponent's head to the mat between their thighs. Other variations of this move are the Vertical Suplex Piledriver, Tombstone Piledriver, and the Grimstone. Inverse Piledriver, a back-to-belly piledriver. The wrestler bends forward or crouches in front of their opponent, grabs hold of the opponent around the legs, and stands up, lifting the opponent upside down facing the wrestler's back. The wrestler then either sits down or drops onto their knees, driving the opponent's head down to the mat. Other variations of this are Axe Guillotine Driver, Rite of Passage Deadeye, Psycho Driver 2, Sunset Driver, and the Beach Break. Flip Piledriver, also referred to as the Canadian Destroyer, begins in a position in which the opponent is bent forward against the wrestler's midsection. The wrestler then grabs around the opponent's midsection, latching onto the opponent's back, with their head to one side of the opponent's hips or between their legs, keeping their legs around the opponent's head. From this position, the wrestler pushes off the mat with their legs to flip the opponent over. As both wrestlers flip, the attacking wrestler uses their body weight to land in a seated position, driving the opponent's head down to the mat between the wrestler's thighs. Other variations of this move are a double underhook variation, in which the arms of a bent-over opponent are placed in a butterfly prior to performing the flip, and the Panama Sunrise. Backflip Piledriver. The user approaches an opponent from behind and grasps his torso with his legs, similar to a body scissors. The user then shifts their weight to suddenly roll backward until they are prone, pulling the opponent behind them so that their neck hits the ground in a fluid motion. An aerial version of this technique is known as Victory Star Drop. Cross-arm Piledriver. From a position in which the opponent is bent forward against the wrestler's midsection, the attacking wrestler crosses the arms of the opponent between their legs, a double pump handle. before then lifting the opponent up into a vertical position and driving them down between the attacking wrestler's legs. Butterfly Piledriver. A double underhook piledriver, also known as the Tiger Driver 98. In this piledriver, a wrestler will bend their opponent forward, placing the opponent's head between the wrestler's legs, and hooks each of the opponent's arms behind the opponent's back. They then pull back on the opponent's arms, lifting them up so that the opponent is held upside down facing in the same direction as the wrestler. The wrestler then drops to a sitting or kneeling position, dropping the opponent's head into the mat. Other variations of this move are Kudo Driver and Kudome Valentine. Argentine Piledriver, also known as the Psycho Driver. The move is executed from an Argentine backbreaker rack position. The wrestler pushes the opponent forward while holding the opponent's leg with one arm and the head with the other arm, and then sits down, driving the opponent head first down to the floor. Stump Piledriver. A pulling piledriver, also known as a cactus driver. This is a variation of piledriver where, instead of wrapping their arms around the opponent's waist, a wrestler grabs onto the back of the waistband of an opponent's tights to lift them upside down before dropping into a sitting position. Scoop Piledriver. Facing the opponent, the wrestler reaches between the opponent's legs with their right arm and reaches around the opponent's neck from the same side with their left arm. From this point, you can do two variations. In the side version, they then lift the opponent up on their chest so that they are facing downwards. The wrestler then moves their left arm from around the opponent's neck to around the opponent's torso. They then turn the opponent so that they are upside down on one side of the wrestler. The wrestler then jumps up and falls down to a sitting position, driving the opponent down to the mat neck and shoulder first. In the slam version, they then lift the opponent up and turn them around so that they are held upside down, as in a scoop slam. The wrestler then drops down to their knees, driving the opponent down to the mat neck and shoulder first. And the last variation, Wheelbarrow Piledriver. The attacking wrestler grabs a standing opponent around the waist from behind and lift them into a backdrop position before then falling to a sitting position, swinging the opponent down so that their upper back and neck between the legs of the wrestler, facing towards them, usually resulting in a pin. Outro. Wrestling has always been interesting to me, and this move was one of three I wanted to see the most. After reading through all the variation and alternate versions, I could have made a part 2 but felt it was unnecessary. So, let me know what you think in the comments. Was this one move you wish you could have seen more? If you think I missed something, let me know in the comments. Until next time, Warriors.